other strange sounds. Thank you guys for coming, and you of course know we're joined by some people around the country, some of our Diet Doc clinics. But continuing our monthly workshop series, hopefully you know tonight is how to cheat on your diet and get away with it. I always used to tell clients that I think that's probably the most important thing to learn right from the beginning. As soon as you learn how to eat, you have to learn how to cheat. Because in the realm of, are you shaking your head, Diane? No. Okay, it's true. If you think you are completely resolved to never do that, and you're never going to fall, it's going to be perfect, you're going to have the perfect plan, and it's just going to be great, very quickly, probably, you're going to find out that's just not true. So we have to have ways of learning to eat foods that are either decadent or indulgent or just in ways that aren't maybe according to the plan we're going to follow and still be okay. And I mean even away from just planning some of those things. And why do you think that is important? If I said it's really that critical to learn how to cheat on your diet appropriately, why might that be important? Or why would you want that? Because good food tastes good, right? I'm not going to stop eating ice cream for the rest of my life just because I've committed to eat healthy. I'm not going to stop eating those foods I like. And I know an awful lot of people who say that just in those moments of pure resolve. I'm on this new diet. I'm going to do great. And we get very self-righteous very quickly when we start dieting. We start looking down our nose at people and saying, wow, how can you eat that? That's horrible. I would never put that in my body. And then a month later, we're sitting in the kitchen with just packages of Oreos all around us, you know, wondering what happened. So understanding some of those mechanisms physiologically, even behaviorally, and how we can even plan some of those things, I think, are very important. We get communication from clients like this every single week, where somebody is saying, wow, I just totally blew my diet. I have no idea what to do. My weight's up 5 or 6 pounds. I'm just a wreck. I have no idea what I need to do. So that's why some of these things are important, is because you need to have some freedom, some flexibility, but you also need to know why physiologically you have to have some increases in your nutrition. You guys who have worked with us, you know that we plan some of those things. We give you relaxed meals or high carb days or things like that. But when you do have maybe a bad unplanned situation, what are some of the consequences you guys have felt? You're uncomfortably full? Okay, so you feel pretty bad from it. Diane, you're going to say something? Yeah, guilt. That's one of the things I had written down, one of the things I wanted to look for. There are several things that happen if we go on some kind of just an unplanned binge or gorging, and we just feel like we've ruined our diet. First of all, what you should expect. When we eat more food than we're used to, think about the metabolic positioning that I described when I'm just going through normal metabolic physiology. How when we first start dieting, we're eating less than our body's used to. We start working through stored carbohydrates in our body. And that carries a pretty sound amount of weight, because every gram of carbohydrate stored in our body equates to about three times its weight in water. So as soon as you start eating less, you know you start losing weight pretty quickly. And it's pretty common for people to say, yeah, that's just water, it's no big deal. Well, when we regain some of that, I had a client just yesterday emailed and said, I had just my one little splurge meal over the weekend. I did this, and all of a sudden, I was up 5 pounds. So that person thinks that they've really ruined their diet, and life's going to be horrible now because they just gave back all of that weight, all that work they did. But as I explained, as quickly as that comes on because of water gain, that's not even, I mean, that's barely half a gallon of retained water, and you guys are made up of 15+ gallons of water. So within a day or two, as you work back through those stored carbs, that's going to come down. So that's one thing. You can even gauge how much damage or how much glycogen you stored is by how much weight you gain. 5 pounds is a little much. That tells me that that's a pretty strong amount of food for that person to eat. But I would expect through kind of a moderate indulgence, a couple pounds, and then hopefully that would be gone in a day or two because you've stored some carbohydrate, and now you're using it, you're back into using body fat. But there are times, as we talked about, that we want to plan these things out, and that's what I want to discuss tonight, is how you can plan these things, and so cheating is not really cheating on your diet. You're not going to end up seeing any kind of damage from that. You're not going to see any setbacks. What are one of the reasons why we want to have some planned increases in food to begin with? You guys know why we do that, besides just giving you a meal off, that kind of thing? Dieting is a metabolic slowdown process. It's catabolic. You're taking in less food than your body needs. So you're bringing that out, autolyzing it from other sources in your body, stored carbohydrates like we talked about, stored body fat through that metabolic positioning phenomena. But even the act of doing that in a proper way, very controlled, regimented, you're dieting in a great way, the good meal structure, so forth, good macronutrient profiles, your metabolism still slows down. That's very normal. But it can slow down aggressively if you're not careful, or you can kind of peg that up a little bit by some planned increases. So there are times in what's called the feed fast cycle that you want some increased amounts of food. And so one of the things that we do is once or twice a week, we like to see people have those scheduled increases in food. And sometimes it might be, if you're very, very strict and you're on a very even plan and you just don't want to take any chances, it can be just clean food. You know, just a higher amount of carbohydrates that day, or higher amount of food in general. But when we're talking about real life training, I personally like to make that a little bit of an indulgent food, something that you're not quite used to. What are some things that you guys might be giving up when you're dieting, kind of throughout the grinding process of losing weight? Any particular foods you avoid in general?
Pepperoni pizza.
Pizza, okay, so you're giving up pizza. So a relaxed meal or a high carb day for you might be to have pizza. Like I can wait once a week, I want to have that food. The things that we say we're not going to eat again and we really like, what does that do to our behavior? That's what makes us more prone to want that food, right? I mean, think about that. I wrote about this in an article in our last magazine. The first chronologically recorded story about human beings, Adam and Eve in the garden. They were put on a diet, a restrictive diet. Don't eat that apple. What happens? They want to eat that apple all of a sudden. If I can't eat that, it must be good. So if we have those kind of foods that we say we're never going to eat again, but we really like them, it's not only impractical, it's pretty unhealthy, and you're probably going to end up crashing, into those foods, with those foods. So, of course, that brings up another point. You're not going to have this list of banned foods that, as you're dieting, you can't eat, and so then once a week or so you eat them all, and trust me, that happens. So we have to plan these things. I think it's really important that we understand that there are boundaries. And I want to speak about, even just for real life, I mentioned real life training. Once you've met your goals, you have to think about, what am I going to do now? How am I going to eat now that I'm not on this diet any longer? And so I always have felt that that's one of the best ways to kind of train yourself to not have that huge transition where all of a sudden you feel like, well, now I don't have the structure. One of the things we hear over and over again is, since we do want our clients to eat the foods that they like commonly and make sure that we can fit those into their normal day, their normal week, is find ways to make that work, but then even on some of those relaxed meal or planned cheat opportunities, that you even decide how much you're going to have. When you guys who have successfully lost weight and you've been maintaining that progress, when you've encountered holidays, you've gone home to Thanksgiving or Christmas or things like that, has it been difficult? Thank you for nodding your head. Yeah, sometimes it is, because there's all this food around all day long, meal after meal, they're carting out the desserts, and it can be very difficult. But I will tell you that on those occasions, vacations, trips, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to operate fantastically, meaning that it doesn't bother me, I know they're there, or it's going to be pretty miserable, and I'm probably going to be blowing it quite often and end up throwing my hands up and saying, well, I've screwed up, I may as well just forget the whole thing and start down the road. But what's the difference for you guys? If you're heading into one of those events, what have you done to ensure that it's going to be a more positive outcome? Anybody? Yes?
I try to be more active.
Okay.
I try to make sure that I'm still being active, rather, maybe
Okay.
more than I am, and maybe more in planning, knowing that I'm going to want to eat more
Gotcha.
at some point.
So just keeping activity up, that's great. If you guys were going to go into an event, let's say this weekend, do you think ahead of what you're going to do? I kind of make some boundaries for myself. I know, for example, that, okay, there's going to be, it's Thanksgiving, let's say, and I know all these foods and desserts are going to be there, but I have to tell myself ahead of time. It's not like this is complete therapy and I'm having this, sports psychology session before the meal, but I'm planning ahead. What are my goals for this day? It's really not obsessive at all. It's just to say, look, am I going to just have a really big meal? Am I okay with that? I could be more active. Like Kathy said, I could eat a little bit less. I could plan on eating less the next day. I could do the 5Ks in the morning, like they're always on Thanksgiving. I did one, I think, with Thane this last Thanksgiving. But maybe I'm going to do that just so I can eat more. Or I might just decide, okay, there are 17 desserts on the table here. I'm going to let myself have one. And I know I can have another one maybe for dinner that night, or I'm going to save a couple for lunches, but I don't have to eat it like it's never going to be there again. Those are the behaviors that become perpetual because we condition ourselves to do that. Every time we're in a situation like that, some kind of event or a cheating type environment, it's all on. I mean, we're just going to go at it and then deal with the aftermath later, which is feeling horrible, gaining some of that weight back, all the guilt and so forth. So to me, it's a matter of just planning ahead and deciding what I'm going to do. But we still, go back to the beginning. I said, why do we even want to do these kind of things? And it's because of that enjoyment. Those kind of foods taste good. We want to be with family. We want to use food to celebrate. One of the things that I cannot stand to hear clients do, and we get in some arguments on our forums and so forth about this at times, is when they say, well, I'm going out to dinner with my family, but while they're sitting there eating this meal, I'll just pull out my Tupperware container from under the table and I'll eat my own food. Or I'll just slam down a protein shake in the car, and then while they're having a great time, I'm just going to sit there and sip on water. Does that sound fun to you guys? I mean, some people count that as extreme resolve, like, yeah, I'm the pillar of great eating, and I'm going to be the example for everybody, and they shouldn't care what I eat. I don't make fun of them for what they're eating, so they should be okay with me doing that. Well, that's okay if that's your attitude about food, but I actually want to enjoy some of that food. I like junk food. I like sugar. I like food like that, and I want to share in those moments. It's a pretty social environment typically around food, but I save those indulgences for those times. You won't see me generally walk into the kitchen and eat crappy, cookies out of a package or something that's made with just Crisco and granulated sugar. I'm not going to waste calories and make those concessions with my health on things like that. I'm going to save them for those events, and that's why I said it's important once you learn how to eat to learn how to cheat, why to cheat. And of course, we don't even like to call it cheating. Corey kind of smacked that down a long time ago, and now we call it a relaxed meal because that sounds so much better, I suppose. It was a splurge meal, and obviously people called it cheat meals for a long time, and I understand that. A relaxed meal does. If you guys can come up with a better name, let us know, because I'm still not totally comfortable with that one. But for these times when we're going to indulge in some not so diet friendly foods, I want to be there. I'm leading the charge in those times, but I also don't want it to cost me an entire week of progress, or just all the guilt and so forth. I mean, nobody wants to gain and lose the same 5 pounds every week. So with all that said, what questions do you guys have so far? Anything on the physiology side when we're discussing what's normal for kind of gaining and what happens with your metabolism? Anything like that? One of the things you have to watch out for, because I do want to make sure that you guys understand some of the science. When you are dieting, you're typically in a pretty solid state of stability. I'm going to go back into metabolic positioning. When we just decide we're going to start a diet and everything's going to be pretty even, we've got our meals planned out, we've got macronutrient ranges we're going to be following, we're going to start working through the stored carbohydrates. And then when we consume food, of course we use that first, but in between meals, since those meals are not going to be so excessive that we're storing new body fat, in between meals we start using the stored carbohydrates. After a couple days, we move into using stored body fat. And there's a range of carbohydrates, could be in difference between men and women and just our body sizes, can be 300 grams of carbohydrate stored to maybe 1,000. So pretty wide range. But you've got 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 of stored carbohydrates. If I'm operating from this very full perspective, I've not been losing any weight, my carbohydrate levels are full, and I have too much food, I don't have anywhere to store it except as body fat. If things are going well and I've worked my way down to this metabolic position where now my body is using stored body fat, I have that entire range of stored carbohydrate capacity to fill up before I start storing a lot of body fat. But hear this loud and clear. When you overeat at any particular meal, and I mean you're eating more than your body can handle, you will store new body fat. You don't get 600 grams of carbohydrates before you then start storing body fat. I mean, your body doesn't work like that on just a set of switches. It's ratios. So if I consume a moderate meal, and we talked about something like pizza. I'm giving up pepperoni pizza on my diet typically because it's high fat, high carb. Typical slice of pizza, 25, 30 grams of carbs, 15 or so grams of fat. I could eat one of those or 2 of those and make it fit in my day, but that's going to take up a lot of the volume of my food. So maybe I am saving it for that relaxed meal. So by the time I get 2 or 3 of those in, maybe that's all I can digest and assimilate at that meal, and then I'm okay. I'm not even storing any new body fat. Then by the end of the next day, I'm right back where I was, and I'm still losing body fat. I'm right back to losing body fat. So let's take that a little bit further. Let's say I eat 6 or 7 slices of pizza, and I'm refilling those glycogen stores, and I probably stored a little extra body fats. And when I'm talking about body fats, think of the caloric value. You guys know a stored pound of body fat is about 3,500 calories. That's a lot of food. Most of us are not going to sit down and eat 3,500 calories in one meal. I know Thane probably can. But that's a lot of food. So it's not like that person who gained 5 pounds of body fat. It may be 4.5 or so pounds of water storage due to those internal carbs now, and maybe a little bit of body fat. But by the time you work back through that stored carbohydrate, you can literally have the rest of your week where you're back into new territory. But there is a quantity issue there. I've seen it all with clients where they think a relaxed meal is 24 pancakes, or I've had people eat 6 supersized cheeseburger meals and so forth, and thinking that's what a relaxed meal or splurge is, because by golly, if I'm not getting it during the week, I'm going to get it during this one meal. That, of course, incredibly counterproductive, because at that one meal, you're not only refilling your body of all those carbohydrates, but you're storing a lot of new body fat. So a couple lessons I want you guys to take from this before we wrap up. First of all, we want you to learn how to eat indulgent food, have those relaxed meals and so forth. But most of us have to work through what does that mean from a timing issue, how often do I get to do that, how much, and some of that takes a little experimentation. Because again, through that metabolic physiology, going to that set point when I'm full of glycogen, I'm absolutely not dieting, everything's stable. It takes me a few days to get here, and now I'm in that metabolic position to start losing body fat. I don't want to go back and forth every 2 or 3 days, because most of the calorie deficits I'm creating now ends up being lost and gained just in carbohydrate. One of the reasons that people can lose up to 50% more body fat on the exact same calorie structure, the person who's really overachieving or achieving the optimal amount, is that once they get into this metabolic position, they're staying here. So if your goal is to stay on a weight loss plan, then have those relaxed meals. They will stimulate your metabolism. They will, if your goal is to preserve muscle or even build muscle, those are those points in time where it's extremely anabolic and metabolic to have those increases, but you don't want to cross that line, go to the point where you're storing new body fat that you have to re-lose, because then that's extremely catabolic. So if I'm trying to lose weight, I'm going to find those amounts of food and those times. And for somebody with a really fast metabolism, sometimes we'll recommend twice a week. You know, sometimes they really need 2 bigger increases in food a couple times a week just to make sure they're not losing too fast. You guys probably all wish you were one of those people, right? Some people can get away with even doing it less often. Some people don't need something weekly. They would say, you know, I've got low thyroid, I just don't lose that fast, and every time I have that indulgent meal, which I really don't care about anyway, you know, it takes me 3 or 4 days to get back where I was. And so they might just do it situationally, where I'm okay to keep losing, and you know, on the holidays or you know, special date night, I'll do that, but it may not even be as regular as once a week. If you're in the situation where your goal is just to maintain, you've lost all your weight, you're exactly where you want to be, my goal is that, and this is for me personally, but there are different strategies, that you would eat in a way that is healthy, and you've got some structure. Your daily life just seems great with food, high energy, high quality food, because you're also concerned about your health. And that allows you a little bit more of a buffer for those indulgent times. And here's why. If I'm perfectly in a maintenance position with my food intake, then what happens when I do have one of those indulgent moments, one of those meals? I've got nowhere to go but really overfilling. So I'm going to store some new body fats, and I'm going to have to work that back off. And that can be okay as long as we do end up working it back off. So you can operate from that position where you're getting all of your food needs met every single day. Or, like I try and do, I want to be just slightly under. I want to eat well enough during the day, during the week, that I would almost consider it a very, very mild diet. I let myself get hungry between meals. I want to feel that physiological hunger, so I know my body, you know, needs that food. And then that way, on the weekends, when I go to the movies, I can have half a bag of popcorn. I can have ice cream once or twice a week. I can do those things, and I've got that little built-in cushion. So I feel like that's a great strategy. We work with people all the time when they're transitioning to maintenance, and I think it's important to have more than just one, thinking about, I only get this once a week. I can only have one indulgence, so I've got to save it for that graduation party or that particular event or holiday. But if you have a couple, it's money in the bank. I mean, you know you can make it through a week with that, as long as the rest of your week is okay. You guys have any strategies like that work well for you? So these are things that you've thought through. And we can also, I mean, there are going to be times when you hit a vacation or something and go through the holidays and you gain a couple pounds. But of course, in a society where 98% of people gain all their weight back within 2 years, I mean, true study, think about that. 98%. Anybody here who your goal was to lose weight, and I know many of you have lost, I mean, we've got hundreds of pounds lost in this room alone. You don't want to be one of those people who 2 years from now, you've got it all back. I mean, that's devastating. So you always reel yourself back in, but have some of those plans. Anything that I didn't cover that you guys want to ask questions about? Another thing that buffers you against that kind of regain, as Kathy said, is exercise. It's a huge component. One of the top 5 things you can do is continue to find things that you like to do regularly to stay active. I mean, we have to do that. Okay, well, I wanted to keep this to 30 minutes, and then once we close down the video feed, you guys, we can still have some questions here. But a couple things I want to mention, particularly for our viewers around the country. We do these workshops not only here out of Evansville, Indiana, but we have over 40 locations now around the country, even a couple going into Australia in the next couple months. And we want to continue doing these, archiving them for our licensees to use. We have some people around the country right now with rooms full of people. And when the video feed is off, they're going to have some Q&A time. So we want you guys to always know you can go to our site, thedietdoc.com, for information on when these are. We also have, I always like to let people know about our magazine, because we put the best of our articles in there. The articles that Corey and I and some of our licensees. In our next issue, we have Dr. Greg Bradley Popovich, who's a professor of nutrition in West Virginia. He's writing an article. We have Dr. Kristen White, who's a sports chiropractor, who's writing some tremendous articles for us. Rich Fitter, who's been in the fitness industry for almost 30 years and is a former science editor for a magazine publishing company. We have so many talented people within our company that we wanted to start putting all of that information into a physical format that you guys can download digitally or just have. So alphamagonline.com. And of course, we're going to have some Q&A here as we close. So I will officially stop there, and we're going to have some protein shakes and go from there. We had 4 minutes left, Linnea is saying. I made it under time for the first time in my life. All right, do you guys have any questions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Right now, my big hurdle for probably the last 2-3 weeks is my job. The way my job, works around is a lot of times I'm working just nonstop, just like from the time I start till, time to close up shop. And a lot of times it's just, the time gets away from you. You're not putting in those, have a shake at, in 2 hours or 2.5 hours. How do I better plan that?
It's a good question. There's actually a lot of versatility built into meal planning. It's been a little bit of a misnomer through the last couple decades that people have gotten in the habit of thinking that you have to be a natural grazer to eat well. You have to eat every 2 or 3 hours and eat these small meals. That can be helpful for some people. We have a lot of clients who have gastric bypass and lap bands and that kind of thing, and they have to eat that way. If you have a fast metabolism or you're pretty active and you try and eat those small meals throughout the day, you can end up just feeling that hunger mount all day long. You get hungrier and hungrier. You eat your next meal and 5 minutes later you're starving. So this theory of intermittent fasting has kind of taken over the industry, and it is that maybe we should go back to eating bigger, more substantial meals. And of course, the way society works, the pendulum goes from small, frequent meals to intermittent fasting is let's just eat once a day. So I'm going to have 1,800 calories all in one sitting. And logically, I would hope you guys know, even just physiologically as I've described, that's not good. But what it does tell us is there are times when we should get filled up. I promise our next book is going to be out in the next couple months. We've said that for about 2 years now. But the entire premise of our new book is to really get into meal planning and giving some structure and alternatives. And I go through 5 meals. We talked about this a couple months ago here. And in those 5 meals, one of them is an anchor meal where we want you to get filled up. Like have a pretty good meal where you could go 4 or 5 hours and not eat. I do that a lot on the weekends when I know I'm going to be out and about, busy working in the yard, where I'll have a pretty big breakfast, bigger than normal, and I honestly won't eat for about 12 hours. I mean, it's just breakfast and dinner. And that may be a day I actually lose a little bit of extra weight because even though I had some bigger meals, that's a lot of time my body's using body fat for energy. I wouldn't recommend doing that as a normal structure, but if your job is incredibly demanding, and you know your schedule ahead of time, you might think, well, I'm just gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to double up on this meal right now because I know I can't eat again for the next 6 hours. Or if you're drinking enough water, you might think, okay, I'm not starving to death, I'm not getting ready to pass out, I missed a snack or a meal, I'm just gonna have a bigger meal at the next one. You know, that's doable. Another thing, this is a very top secret tip that I only share with a few people. Sugar is not going to kill you. And so this is sweet tea. I didn't even like sweet tea until a couple years ago because most of the time you taste something really sweet, it's like, wow, that's just nasty, gross sweet. But I'll pour half of these out into another container and fill it with ice. So eventually it's melting and it's watered down. But still, this I started last night. So I've had about 20 or so grams of sugar in the last 24 hours from this because sometimes instead of eating a meal, I just need to keep my blood sugar stable. And so that would be something for you. You're on a job, have a bottle of Gatorade. And say, you know what, 35, 50 grams of my carbs, I may have to catch up on protein at the next meal, or maybe my protein was just low for the day and my carbs were just a little high, but that sure beats a Big Mac and fries or a 32-ounce Coke or just completely keeping it. The biggest problem I see with people who get into real rigid meal planning is when we get too hungry, we can completely crash. Or if we just think, wow, I messed up my day, so now I don't know what to do, and so I'm just going to give up and go eat a bag of chips. You guys would never do that, right? I'm the only guy in the room who does that, I would assume. Like you get frustrated, emotional eating, stress eating, so pretty soon it's like tortilla chips are flying around the living room. That's sometimes an evening at my house. But that's how I would handle that.
Okay.
It's meal planning can be reactive and can be done well if you just know what's happening physiologically. We're good on it. We're done recording. So thanks. I made it under time this time. Any more questions on anything? I love ranting out a little bit. Did I bore you guys that much? Or you guys are just ready to go home?
Okay, you said the big when your big meals, if you feel hungry all the time throughout the day and you're in the small ones.
Mm-hmm.
But how often can you eat the bigger meals? Because you said not to do it all the time.
I would go. You have to kind of trust your body on how you feel. So if I have, in our book, we talk about having one anchor meal a day. Kind of plan on that because just physiologically, what happens is we wake up in the morning and we're told that should be the biggest meal of the day because it's breakfast. You gotta fuel the day, and it's true you have been fasting all night, so your blood sugar's low, but your body temperature's low. You're not really doing anything yet. And so a lot of times you're just not hungry and ready for that meal. But you get toward the late afternoon, mid-afternoon, especially if you've done a physical job or maybe you work out in the morning, you get up and do cardio or something, and I guarantee at some point in the day you are going to get slammed with real hunger. And so that's when I say have that anchor meal planned. If I know I typically am hungry at night, then it's okay to have your biggest meal at night. I typically like to not feel stuffed and gross. If I eat too much food, I get lethargic, I feel just, you get the insulin spike and you just feel bad. When I'm at work, I don't want to feel that way. And so I typically have a pretty light lunch. My lunch today was a steak and a vegetable. No carbohydrates. Matter of fact, Lauren, I'll go through my whole day. Scoop of protein powder for breakfast and a bagel. And because I'm not trying to lose weight, 45, 50 grams of carbs in one bagel is not, that's a good sized meal for me, but it's not too much.
The regular people?
Yeah, regular. So then I went about 4 hours or so, and I had a granola bar. And so normal, maybe 35 grams of carbohydrates there. Since that was kind of small, and now, I've been up for 6-7 hours. Now I'm getting kind of hungry. Then I had that steak and vegetable. Then I did a cardio this afternoon, and so to fuel this is like confession. I had my Reese's peanut butter cups. This is not something I would do if I was dieting, if I was trying to lose weight. But that's when, I want that little burst of sugar, because that will really fuel a great workout for me. If I was trying to actively lose weight, I would do the same thing with a healthier food. It could be a couple rice cakes on peanut butter. It could be a little bit of oatmeal and protein powder. Believe it or not, I have successfully dieted down for bodybuilding contests and that kind of thing, so I'm not completely addicted to Reese's and things like that. I can exhibit discipline once in a while. But you can see those are all kind of small meals, right? And so tonight, which is normal for me, I will have a bigger meal. I will have an anchor meal, which will be a protein source and a vegetable and a starchy carbohydrate. And if I don't have a starchy carbohydrate then, I might wait for an hour or two and have a snack, as I'm in the evening that way. Our lovely server, Linnea, has protein. What is it?
This is one of them.
Cinnamon meringue?
Lemon.
Lemon meringue. I was going to say, that was interesting. The way I heard it. Lemon meringue. Okay, well, you can walk around today and give people samples if you want.
There's one more coming.
So it depends on your activity level, Lauren, and how often. Like, it doesn't have to be a daily thing. Every day can be different. But if you're somebody who just likes to eat pretty infrequently, I had a client yesterday who emailed, and she honestly just wants to eat 3 times a day. She said, I feel better having bigger meals, instead of having just a granola bar or just this here. I mean, she likes to have a starchy carbohydrate, a protein source, a fibrous carbohydrate, 3 meals a day with 5 or 6 hours between meals, and she feels great. So there's really not any particular thing you have to do. It's understanding what you feel like and then seeing the results.
I'm with you. I tend to get hungrier later in the evening, or not evening, in the afternoon. So I don't really want necessarily a need a big breakfast. And I also like the idea of having the macros in the bank, or the calories in the bank, so to speak. If you have a big breakfast and you're trying to lose weight, you have less margin for error the rest of the day.
Right.
If you have a smaller, for me at least, if I have a smaller breakfast and that smaller mid-morning snack, you have that available. If you mess up, you're still okay. But otherwise, I kind of feel under the gun. I've had a big breakfast, and now I'm under the gun the rest of the day. I can't make any mistakes. So that's another reason why I like to do what you do.
The one thing you have to watch for is if you work out in the morning and you really see hunger. I'll see this a lot with people. When they're really struggling with hunger, I'll look through their day, and they might have egg whites for breakfast, and then they have a protein shake as a snack, and then they have a protein source and a little vegetable for lunch. And so by mid-afternoon, they virtually had no carbohydrates. So their blood sugar has got to be tanking, and they're just feeling bad. So I completely agree with them, and that's why I led with that as well, that just don't feel like you got to have a huge breakfast. But you do need to have those meals placed where it fits your energy needs and how you feel. And that's why I even like the flexibility. I want people to really consider a structure that works for you, but then be okay deviating from that. There are some days you just might not be hungry, so skip the snack. It's okay. Save it for later. You might be up really late that night and you need an extra late night snack. There's not a problem with that.
How about, at my house, with our busy schedule, sometimes we don't eat our evening meals till about 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And my son likes to eat earlier than that, but now that he's home for the summer, he just says, Mom, we need to be eating earlier than that. I said, well, if you want me to cook and have a healthy meal, it has to be about that time. I mean, between 8 and 9, but it's not hard for us to eat at 9 o'clock. Is that really bad?
We used to tell people, and this still shows up in magazines, don't eat carbohydrates after this time, don't eat a big meal late, don't eat before bed. If you go to bed with food in your stomach, it's all going to turn to body fat. And actual research now shows that is not true. If you have the same amount of calories one day versus another, and you just happen to have a bigger meal at night, If that's factored in, that means you've gone through more time during the day where you've used more body fat as energy, and studies show that you can eat your largest meal at night and be okay. And I'm one of those people, I don't want to go to bed hungry. You've got to have something in your stomach just to not be starving. And my bedtime fluctuates quite a bit, so I might need an extra snack in there, and even my work schedule. I mean, I could be home eating dinner at 5, or I could be eating at 9. So I wouldn't worry about that at all, as long as you're feeling like the day is very stable. The problem I get into is if I have not eaten enough, and my dinner is delayed, and now it's 9 or 10 o'clock, I will overeat most of the time, because I'm just ravenous. And and then of course you feel horrible. Now you're going to bed, feeling stuffed, and that's even worse. But as long as you're thinking through it, it's not a problem at all.
My cycle lately has been the gaining back everything I've lost during the week. And I like to eat smaller meals throughout the day. I do have a pretty high metabolism, and I like to graze naturally anyway, so that works for me. But so for about the first 3 or 4 days, I'm totally fine. I'm not hungry at all while I'm eating the smaller meals throughout the day, and that's very nice because I don't like to be, actually really hungry. But then by it's around day 4 or 5, I don't know what happens, but I turn to a hunger monster and I just go crazy. And it's like I don't understand, because I've been eating, but all of a sudden I want to eat, my arm and you and everybody in the room, and I can't stop.
Is it? And mental. See, I'm so lazy, I never make good things like this. I have to take advantage of you. That is a phenomenal question that goes right into what we were talking about. It's fantastic, because in this whole metabolic positioning cycle, as you are getting away, like you've had a little bit of a splurge or relaxed meal on the weekend, a high day, and now you're working through that, there's something in your brain that's very literal called glucose withdrawal. And as your blood sugar, and it's the exact same reaction as a heroin addict or anything else like that. You're going through withdrawal, and you will get hungry. And so you literally should kind of plan. You might be one of those people, I said, with a fast metabolism. Some people need more than one higher food intake day per week.
Okay.
You might need a second one.
2.
So I would say, here's your weekend, indulgent meal. You're going out with friends, doing this or that, or kind of a planned high day. Have a little bit of an increase midweek, or maybe a roving emergency snack where you say, I know once a week I'm going to be hungry or so toward the end of the week, 4 or 5 days later. So I'm going to allow myself an extra meal, or an extra 25 grams of carbs, or an extra protein. I mean, whatever it is,
Okay.
you just know, hey, this is factored into my week. I can use it when I want, and by golly, I know it's usually Thursday or something like that.
How do you know that's appropriate or not if you're trying to lose weight though?
Because you'll either keep losing or you won't. That's why it's so important to track your food, track your results, because if you've got that cumulative history, you can say, hey, I lost 2 pounds this week, 2 pounds this week. Whoa, wait a second, I didn't lose anything this week. What's wrong? What did I do differently? Well, we can go back there and see what we did differently. Oh yeah, that was that weekend that I went out and drank 12 margaritas and so forth, so then the next week I lost 2 again, lost 2. It makes sense when you can see it on paper and you're measuring things. Yes.
So I have a follow-up question about the glycogen. Is that a set point for each individual? Obviously it would be different from each person, but is that range kind of set for the individual, and then can you
Will you
change it?
come to all of our lectures? Because you just have these great questions.
Oh, thanks.
We should have these being filmed right now.
No, the video's coming out.
It's your metabolism is very genetic. So you maybe have a faster metabolism than other people and need a certain food intake that's different. But there are a lot of variables, including your activity level and output. So it might be, if you're really strict on your diet and it's the same food intake and your activity level is pretty much the same and averages out, it might be that you feel the same. But with changes of season, you're outside more, you could be mowing the lawn this day, you're burning an extra 200 or 300 calories you didn't realize. I mean, you could be hitting it sooner, you could be losing weight faster. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons that can fluctuate. but it is different person to person. But that's why you have to get really good at just kind of reading what your body's doing, what your body's telling you.
What about losing weight too fast? What's the cons of losing weight too fast?
If you're losing weight fast and it's painful, like you're just gutting it out, I'm gonna starve and I'm gonna get this, weight off, you could be suppressing your metabolism. You could be losing lean body mass, and like a spring, there's probably going to be a pretty vicious rebound. But there are some people, because of pretty fast metabolism, that they just lose fast. I was talking to Corey this week. I remember having a client who lost 100 pounds, and he lost 4 to 5 pounds a week every single week. And I begged him to eat more, and he just wasn't hungry. I'm great, like I can't eat more, I'm full. And I was worried about his metabolism and so forth, and he just lost a lot of weight. Even having gained 100 pounds, he had a pretty good metabolism. That's just how much food he was overeating to maintain his weight. So, definitely keep your eye on how you feel and energy levels and hunger. But you might, especially with the more body fat you have, your body is more comfortable losing a higher percent of it. When you get closer to your normal weight, there's something called your metabolic set point, and I guarantee you'll get hungrier and weight loss will slow down as you get closer to that. Okay, well, Corey or Linnea, I think, are wanting to do some drawings there. Linnea, you gonna do some drawings? Okay, I'll let you guys take it away.
We'll go for a podcast first. And Thane, if you win again, then you go to the site and pick which one you want.
Okay.
I put these podcasts together and sell them on the site, but I'll get this one as a prize tonight. And they're focused on mental edge related topics like motivation and commitment. And so who's a good winner? Sandy. Sandy? Congratulations. We'll draw for a book next. Sydney. How many books do you have now?
I think I have 2.
Okay, so we can do something else too.
Yeah, if you want to pick like if you have a protein or if you want a podcast or something, I mean, you can pick.
Voucher for the.
Yeah, we should do that, just like a gift certificate to our,
Yeah, to the store.
yeah, totally fine. Do you guys have any final questions? Gary and Kathy are looking forward to the day when we learn how to handle all this A/B stuff. The training wheels come off. This was better this time, don't you think? I mean, no major glitches, except for walking around for 10 minutes. What?
We're groupies. What are you talking
Well,
about?
well, thank you guys for coming. And next week or next month, Corey will be doing something way better. So make sure you come back. If you guys ever have suggestions on topics that you want to hear something about, that'd be great.
I really
submit
like
those.
hearing how you eat, whenever you tell your little personal antidotes. I mean, that helps me because I'm like, oh, Joe does that. Okay, well, all right then,
Yeah,
that's-
how many ounces was the steak today?
Here's something that's a little different. You want a story? So I'm down at University of Tampa a couple weeks ago, and I'm speaking with all these other PhDs. These guys are just phenomenal specialists in their field. The University of Tampa Human Performance Lab. There's this guy, Dr. Dominique Gabriel, who is one of the foremost leaders in ketogenic research, which is eating zero carbohydrates, which I'm totally not a fan of. But he gets millions and millions of dollars from the government to study this for things like Navy divers and people who need pretty dense meals like MREs and that kind of thing. And so I'm listening and I'm kind of digging the research. I understand it. It's just completely impractical, right? You should never, I think, eat zero carbohydrates. You can survive that way for sure. You can switch over to a ketogenic metabolism where your brain is running on ketone bodies and you can survive. I mean, that's what lions and cheetahs do. They're not out in the jungle eating blueberries and, and French fries. They're eating each other. It's all, you can be a mammal and eat a ketogenic diet. But again, I was kind of excited about the research and